What's up, Klansmen? I'm your black face of horror, Sean Bass, and welcome to the Killer Countdown. Before I get into today's video topic, I am inviting any and all content creators to a bit of an open challenge. What I want you to do is go back and rewatch a horror film that legitimately and genuinely scared you as a child, and give us a bit of a deep dive retrospective look on your current insights and opinions of the film. Tell us what the movie did to scare you so much, and tell us exactly how you feel about the same movie right now. I've already reached out and invited a few creators, and I actually have a list of other content creators that I'm going to invite once this video gets published. I will be adding videos to a public playlist so the entire horror community can come together and we just get to talk about our experiences growing up. Everyone is invited, and if you participate, please feel free to pass this on to other creators that you think will also be interested in making a video. The best ways for your video to get added to this playlist is if you use the hashtag childhood movie trauma, so it'd be very easy for me to find you, and you could also contact me via social media, or you can simply comment down below a link to your video so I can watch it, and of course, I can add it to the playlist that way as well. Which the playlist will obviously be titled Childhood Movie Trauma. So, thank you so much. Let's get this started. With the 20-year anniversary of the release for Candyman 3, Day of the Dead arriving July 9th, I wanted to take a retrospective look at the Candyman legacy, one of which that is completely unique. To me, Candyman isn't just one of the run-of-the-mill slashers that I grew up watching. Candyman was always more than a film. Candyman was and still is a mythos that I feel doesn't get as much credit as it always deserved. As you all know, I grew up on horror movies, watching countless slashers from Friday the 13th, Halloween, to the Leprechaun and Rumpelstiltskin, but I always avoided watching Candyman. Just a simple mention of the name always sent chills up my spine. Even to this day, I refuse to say Candyman 5 times in front of a mirror, or say it 5 times in general, which at the end of this video, I'm going to do it and you're coming with me. Now, I always thought the reason why Candyman, or Daniel Robitaille, scared me the most is because he was black. I shrugged off Jason. He's a white person with hydrosyphilis, and even an undead zombie. The Lost Boys were cool as hell and were emo before emo was emo. The Leprechaun was the Lucky Charms poster boy, and Michael Myers was every white-collar American during the Great Depression. But Daniel Robitaille was on a completely different psychological level. It was so bad that at one point I stopped seeing Candyman. I stopped seeing Daniel Robitaille, and all I saw was Tony Todd. And yes, the Night of the Living Dead 1990 remake did irreversible damage for years. Fast forward to Christmas 2014, and my mom thought it was a good idea to fuck with me psychologically, and she bought me the Candyman trilogy on DVD. But I ain't no bitch, so after about 40 minutes or so, when I finally stopped crying, I decided to watch the trilogy in broad daylight, with the lights on Jesus' birthday. Thus, after watching the movies, my because he's black theory was over and done away with immediately. And actually, I was no longer scared. I was overcome with a rush of sympathy and a severe misunderstanding of the character, primarily in regards to the first film. Even though Candyman no longer scares me, I actually have a newfound appreciation for the film. It made me ask questions that I had no choice but to dive deep into the rabbit hole to answer. But the most important thing to do is to start with Daniel Robitaille's backstory.
Candyman was the son of a slave and had grown up in polite society. He had a prodigious talent as an artist. He was commissioned by a wealthy landowner to capture his daughter's virginal beauty. Well, of course, they fell deeply in love and she became pregnant. Poor Candyman.
Which in turn forced Catherine's father to hire a pack of townspeople that chased Daniel to the area that is now Cabrini Green, where his painting hand was sawed off. The people then covered his prone body in honeycomb, where the angry bees would sting him to death.
They burned his body on a giant pyre, and then scattered his ashes over Cabrini Green.
Now we're at the beginning of the film, where we meet Helen Lyle. She and her colleague Bernadette are working on a thesis about the Candyman urban legend. We're told the story about a young couple of Claire and Billy. They were together one night and Billy says Candyman 4 times in the mirror before going downstairs. By herself in the bathroom, Claire says Candyman the 5th and last time and is killed.
What he saw turned his hair white from shock.
The student tells Helen the story in a very campfire story fashion. So almost immediately, Candyman is presented as folklore. And then there's a conversation between Helen, Henrietta, and Kitty about the murder of Ruthie Jean.
Everybody's scared of him once it get dark.
In no way has the nighttime been a factor in the folklore tale to this point.
They say he killed the lady.
And she heard this banging and smashing like somebody was trying to make a hole in the wall. So Ruthie called 911 and she said there's somebody coming through the walls. And they didn't believe her. She was killed with a hook.
Henrietta and Kitty don't describe Candyman as some kind of mystical urban legend killer. Helen's research leads her to the Cabrini Green projects where Ruthie was murdered, and we meet Anne-Marie and her baby Anthony. Anne-Marie heard Ruthie screaming and confirms the fact that someone is coming through the walls. More specifically, holes in the wall behind the bathroom mirrors. By taking the mirrors out, you can gain access into the neighboring apartment's bathroom. So the noise that Ruthie heard that night was the sound of someone trying to get into her home by breaking in through the back of the mirror in her bathroom. Now to me, this sounds more like a run-of-the-mill home invasion with a dash of murder in the first degree. Are the circumstances nonsensical? Yes. But can these events actually happen in real life? Yeah. But is Henrietta and Kitty talking about the same person that the student was talking about before? No. Does Helen know that they're not talking about the same person? No. At least not yet.
I'm scared. Scared for my child. They ain't never gonna catch him. Candyman.
And then there's this impressionable young man named Jake, where his beliefs land smack dab in the middle between the Candyman folklore and the real man who's using the moniker.
I can't say nothing. A Candyman will get me.
You know, you don't have to tell me. You could just show me. And if you show me where Candyman is, I'll make you a promise. It'll be our secret.
Jake leads Helen to the public bathroom where Jake believes Candyman dwells. He tells the story of a boy with mental disabilities that had his groin mutilated, which is gruesome but possible.
There's a big tough guy. He runs over to check it out. Come out of there shaking and crying. He only been in there 5 seconds. Come out of there and his hair turned white. I mean, it turned white, just like that.
Which is typically what we use to exaggerate what happens to people when they are in shock. Jake doesn't indicate that as some kind of exaggeration. He says it in the manner as if that's something that actually happened. Helen makes her way into the bathroom and is encountered by the guy who has terrorized the people of Cabrini Green for years, using the Candyman moniker.
I hear you looking for Candyman, bitch. Well, you found him.
Now, in my opinion, this basically translates to the audience that Daniel Robitaille, or Candyman, could have definitely existed at some point in time. But even if he didn't, the campfire stories and folklore is what helped his story stand the test of time. The stories became so big that the Cabrini residents simply say that it was the Candyman that has been committing all of these gruesome murders over this long period of time. But they were always referring to the real man, whereas non-Cabrini residents and Helen simply refer to Candyman as the urban legend character. The Cabrini residents know that the Candyman is a man who basically runs the projects like some kind of kingpin, and that's the main reason why Jake was so adamant about maintaining secrecy with Helen.
You said it was our secret. You lied.
It still is, Jake. You won't have to go to court.
So once the confrontation in the bathroom occurs, that's when Helen and the audience realize that Candyman is more than a folktale. After assaulting Helen, the real-life Candyman is captured and put behind bars, and police pin all of the gruesome murders on him, which in turn puts Helen on her high horse immediately, basically saying that yes, I told you guys all along that this whole Candyman thing was just a load of BS, and my next level investigation skills led to this man's real-life capture. And now he's being put behind bars for the rest of his life. You're welcome.
He's just a story. You know, like Dracula or Frankenstein. A bad man took his name so he could scare us. But now that he's locked up, everything's gonna be okay.
Candyman ain't real.
Then at 45 minutes into the film, Helen's life plunges into a rapid downward spiral when Daniel Robitaille appears for the first time to put the ball back in her court for doubting his legend and discrediting him, thus forcing Helen to suffer a similar fate he experienced.
I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing. So now I must shed innocent blood.
Which forced me to ask the first main question, and that is, what made Helen so different from all the other people who mocked his legend in the past? Helen said the Candyman name for the 5th time in the mirror, just like Claire did at the beginning of the movie, where she was immediately killed right after that. So why not kill Helen right after doing so? It's because Helen possesses the knowledge and resources big enough to completely discredit Daniel's urban legend and make him a non-factor on a much larger scale. More so than any other individual up to this point in the film. What would have happened if Daniel never intervened? Well, Helen gets published in a newspaper, he gets discredited because the real serial killer has been put behind bars and charged with all the murders, so the whole Daniel Robitaille legend is non-existent. There is no Candyman. There's just one dude in full body flesh and blood right there in prison behind bars.
All day, not a game, in jail, by myself.
You are nothing. Daniel was able to feed off of the evil tales and urban legends throughout the years, but without that, all you have is a sympathetic person, which is the exact opposite of his internal core desires. And that alone makes me believe that when he kills the doctor and Bernadette, those were his first 2 victims ever. He was simply living vicariously through the urban legends until he met his match in the form of Helen Lyle. He murdered those 2 to show Helen exactly what he's capable of, and to also protect his mystique. Now that I explained what made Helen different from all the other people in the past, now we must talk about her demise. She's at the summit of Mount Everest before everything in her life plummets to the depths of hell. Helen got everything she could have ever wanted: a published thesis, a debunked myth, and a life with the love of her life, Trevor, until she's framed for the murders and the kidnapping of baby Anthony, as well as losing the only thing she has left.
Trevor, you were all I had left.
She is ultimately hunted down by the Cabrini residents and her body burned upon a pyre, leaving behind a legend of murder she didn't commit herself, being summoned from the afterlife by saying her name 5 times in a mirror to wreak havoc on those who believe the folktales. Sounds familiar, right? Another question that was asked that I just chose not to spend too much time on, and that was, what made baby Anthony so important? The abridged answer is that Daniel was killed and robbed of the very thing that he would have never gotten to experience: living a life with the love of his life and their unborn child. Daniel chooses Helen and Anthony to join him in the afterlife so he could retrieve what was robbed from him all those years ago, which was the ability to have a family. Also, a fun fact about Anthony, the name origin is Latin for Antonius. The folk definition of Anthony is priceless and inestimable worth, which are 2 words many people today would use when describing what family means to them. Candyman, 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 Candyman. Guys, in the end, the original film is the furthest thing from the horror genre. This film tells a story of an injustice beset on a man who fell in love with a woman that he had no business having eyes for. And honestly, I feel like he's more of a sheep in wolf's clothing. We also have a story of a very naive woman with a by any means necessary mindset. But at the end of the day, she always meant well. But then again, she was humbled in the most vicious way possible. Sure, a few people died along the way, but this isn't your run-of-the-mill horror, slasher, or maybe even your thriller. If anything, I could consider this as a modern-day Shakespeare tragedy, which is one of the main reasons why I believe this film is deeply misunderstood. Candyman.